Hello, you are listening to the Charles Bonnet Syndrome podcast. My name is Shaimond, and today's special guest is Melissa Carney. She is a community outreach and graduate support manager at Guiding Eyes for the Blind. How you doing today, Melissa?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing well too. I'm so glad to be speaking with you today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So, can you tell the audience a little bit more about yourself and maybe how long you've been working for Guiding Eyes for the Blind?
Sure. So I am the community outreach and graduate support manager at Guiding Eyes for the Blind. I've been in this role for just over 3 years now. So I began in November of 2021. In this role, I perform a variety of tasks. This could be anywhere from resolving access discrimination issues faced by our guide dog handlers, helping potential applicants with guide dog readiness and deciding if a guide dog is the right choice for them because it's not for everyone. Um, and then I also provide education to the general public about guide dogs, blindness in general, and how we can boost access and inclusion efforts in our local communities.
Wow, so I'm talking to the right person to find out about guide dogs, and I look forward to the things that you're going to share with us.
Absolutely. And I also speak from lived experience. I myself am also a guide dog handler. I've been working my current guide dog, a male yellow Labrador retriever named Aaron, Aron, for almost 9 years. So it's been a while, and he's a wonderful dog. It's been a life-changing experience for I think both of us.
So, my first question is, what is the criteria for someone to even be eligible to get a guide dog?
So to receive a guide dog, you have to be, first of all, legally blind. That could be a variety of different vision conditions, but you have to be legally blind. You have to have orientation and mobility training, so skills using a white cane. This is another mobility tool. I'm sure many are familiar with it, but it's kind of the precursor for receiving a guide dog. We just want to see that you're able to travel independently, you're able to cross streets, you're able to memorize your routes, and most importantly, you're able to problem solve. We don't expect perfection. We all get lost. I kind of joke that that's the best way to embrace the learning curve and find your way again is to take a wrong turn or two. But the key is being able to reorient yourself and find your way along that route once again to proceed. So those are some of the biggest requirements. But in general, we want to see that you have a lifestyle that will support a guide dog. So do you have destinations? Do you travel to school? Do you travel to work? Do you have exercise routes, even if you're retired? We have clients who are anywhere from 16 years old to in their 80s, right? So there's no age requirement, there's no lifestyle requirements per se. But we want to get to know a bit about each of our applicants to make sure that a guide dog is suitable and see what the person's needs are. And if we can meet those needs by providing them with a guide dog. So, as you can imagine, it's an intensive process in finding the right match and looking through the person's qualifications and needs, but it's a necessary one to make sure that the partnership between dog and person is successful. And not only will the client be working with the guide dog, but they will also be caring for the guide dog. So we want to make sure that they have the ability to do so, whether that's keeping a consistent routine, grooming the dog on a regular basis, feeding the dog, taking the dog to the bathroom, a variety of different tasks to make sure that the dog is cared for. So wrap that all up in a nice little package, and we're able to see if that person is eligible.
What is the success rate, or maybe that's not the right way to word it, but how many people, if you know, put in an application and actually are given a guide dog? Is that something that you track and that you can share?
It's usually not something we track because it's not a rigid percentage. Because sometimes a person won't be outright unqualified, but maybe they need some additional work on developing routes, independent travel, something as simple but as important as building their confidence. So it's not a downright denial, but rather a question of whether it's the right time to receive a guide dog. So we may recommend some additional steps to the applicant to work on and then encourage them to reapply in the future once they've worked on those skills. It's actually pretty rare that there's a hard no. It's only if the conditions in which they live are unsafe for a dog or if they don't have any available independent travel or they're just new to vision loss. There's an adjustment period, both physical and emotional for all of us. And I think there's a profound gap in the knowledge that's given by medical professionals. A lot of people refer those who've just lost their vision to receive a guide dog, not realizing that a guide dog is only half the equation. The handler themselves needs to be confident and learn how to use the white cane before taking on the additional responsibility of a guide dog. So, for those reasons and many more, unfortunately, it's not as cut and dry as you may think.
Do you actually provide the mobility training at your facility, or would you refer them to someone else like Lighthouse Guild for the Blind or some other place?
We typically prefer them. We do offer some seminars and transitional skills from white cane to guide dog, but in general, we refer applicants to their local agency for the blind, Lighthouse, other nonprofits, etc.
So if someone's listening to this and they said, wow, I'm legally blind, I would like to consider a guide dog, what is the first step that they would do? Is there like a phone number or something they call?
There's a couple different ways to handle that. We do have a main number to contact our client experience team to learn more about the process of applying for and receiving a guide dog. That number is 888-987-2188, or they can email clientexperience@guidingeyes.org. Another way to just familiarize yourself with what it might be like to have a guide dog, some things that you should be considering. Guiding Eyes does have an Is a Guide Dog Right for Me page located right on our website at guidingeyes.org. So if you visit our admissions menu, you'll see a link to that Is a Guide Dog Right for Me page. And that has some questions just to get you thinking if it's the right time, if it's the right fit for you. And then if you want to proceed, you can visit our website again for our application. So you start off with just completing a written application that gives us a snapshot of who you are, what your needs are in a guide dog, and why you're interested in receiving a guide dog, along with some paperwork.
And how long does it usually take before you can actually find out if you're approved?
It's unfortunately a complex answer. It really depends on, for example, when we get your medical forms, your vision report. We do ask for personal references for first time handlers. That could take anywhere from, a week if everyone who's assisting in that process is proactive. It might take a few weeks. The answer varies, but we do need that completed package before we can move on. And the next step in that process is what we call the home interview. That's when one of our regional guide dog mobility instructors who are placed throughout the country will come out to the applicant's home, meet with them in person, introduce themselves, get to know a bit more about the person, and really just kind of strengthen that application package that we have. From there, we're also going to observe the person completing a route independently with their white cane, ideally crossing some streets, demonstrating a route that they walk on a regular basis, perhaps a daily basis, and then really just observe their home environment and continue to obtain information on what the person's needs are in a guide dog and if they qualify. And then from there, we will take all of that information. The person will be brought through what we call selection committee, which is where we will review all of their materials and let them know if they qualify for a guide dog. So that process is, there's a lot of steps involved. So again, it could take weeks to maybe even a couple months in some cases.
Okay. So what is it like? You said you have a guide dog yourself. Can you talk about like a day in the life of having a guide dog?
Absolutely. I would say having a routine is very important, especially for a first time handler like myself. This is my first guide dog. You want to make sure that to set yourself up for the most success, you have consistent feeding times for the dog, consistent bathroom times. If you have a schedule, you always want to build what your dog needs into your schedule. It's not meant to be an inconvenience, but rather a way that the dog can simply fit into your lifestyle. So I would say that's really important for me. Of course, whenever I go somewhere, I'm always considering what do I need to pack? What does my guide dog need? What do we need to be successful? Is it a water bottle, a water bowl, extra food? If it's hot out, is it a pair of booties that he'll need to wear on his paws to keep them protected? If it's cold out, is a little, coat that he might need if it's super, super cold. And in general, just some extra equipment that might be helpful. Maybe a spare leash, maybe a white cane if you get into trouble and either your dog's not feeling well or you get disoriented on route and you want to double check where you are. That's really helpful. So I would say advanced planning is a big part of being a guide dog handler. But in general, as you go through your life together in the partnership, the main principle and my favorite principle to emphasize to anyone considering getting a guide dog is teamwork. You have to be responsible, your dog has to be responsible, but ultimately you're making the decisions together. You're leading those decisions much of the time, but your dog is also helping you navigate around things, for example, that you wouldn't know were there. So, a classic example I give is if you're walking down a sidewalk and there's a trash can on your path, let's say it's trash day, you're waiting for the garbage truck to come pick those up. There are certainly situations in which the guide dog will not have enough room to get around that trash can. So they may stop and wait for direction from you. So you then have to indicate to the dog whether he or she should go right or left around the trash can. So maybe there's, an obstacle like a street on one side. You probably then want to go into the grass and go around the trash can that way because it's safer. There's not traffic that you're also dealing with. So ultimately, you as the handler have to help the dog make the safest decision, but they're there to back you up and follow your direction. Similarly, when you're crossing the street, the guide dog will target the curb for you and will cross the street straight to the other side. However, even though your dog brings you to the curb, you as the handler are still responsible for judging that traffic auditorily, listening to the shape of the intersection, how it's controlled, getting a feel for the cycle of the traffic, that you can indicate to the dog when it's safe to move forward. I think that's a pretty common misconception that the dog will help determine that. That is not the case. It is the handler's responsibility. So those are just some classic examples of when teamwork is really important. And that's how you go about your day. I like to say you're two brains that are navigating the same problem. Sometimes you may disagree. Sometimes you may have a miscommunication, but over time, as you bond, you become one. The communication is seamless, and it's a beautiful experience being able to almost read each other's mind and develop that telepathy and memorize routes together.
Can any dog be a guide dog, or is it best for certain breeds?
There's been a lot of experimentation, as you can imagine, over the years with different breeds for guide work specifically, definitely with service work, but especially for guide dog work. The most tried and true breeds are, I would say, breed at this point is the Labrador Retriever. The Labrador Retriever is found to be the most successful at guide work, the most accurate, the most willing to please. They have a very strong work ethic, and you're building on a lot of natural instincts that they inherently have. Another common breed, not as common, is a Golden Retriever. And yet another one, still not as common, is a German Shepherd. And then there aren't many Golden Retriever and Labrador Retriever crosses out there as well. At Guiding Eye specifically, we only breed a majority Labrador retrievers and a small percentage of German shepherds.
Is it ever a case where you may assign someone a dog and then it kind of doesn't work out and then you have to reassign them a dog? Does that happen?
It does happen. It happens at any guide dog school for the simple fact that a couple of reasons. When a dog is in training, it's a highly monitored environment. Sometimes when the dog goes out into the real world, they're with a new handler, they're not in a more protected environment with their trainer, they're really put to the test. Some dogs can become stressed and their work patterns break down, right? They're not perfect, they're not robots. And we never want to force a dog to do a job they do not want to do. And we don't want the handler to be unsafe, most importantly. So sometimes, due to the consequences and the realities of the real world, a dog will not work out. Or sometimes on the person's side, the person realizes they missed their white cane, or maybe they're not relying on a guide dog in the way that they thought they would. So they decide it's not the best fit for them. Or maybe they have a medical condition, they have a change in vision that makes it difficult for them to readjust to working with a guide dog. Um, in today's day and age, I think a lot of people are frustrated with access denials and places such as Ubers and Lyfts and rideshare vehicles in general. So there could be a variety of reasons. And sometimes it's just there's nothing wrong with the person, there's nothing wrong with the dog. They just didn't quite click, and that's okay. There's no shame around that. There's a lot of emotions that you can imagine. I think a lot of handlers blame themselves. But the reality is sometimes it's just, might look great on paper and maybe for the first few weeks, first few months, even the first couple of years. And then it doesn't. And in some cases, the dog will be reissued and or the handler will come in for another dog. They'll go through the same process again. And all is well. The dog is matched with the person they're supposed to be with. And of course, the client is matched with the dog that they're supposed to be with.
I like what you said. You said it's not the person's fault and it's not the dog's fault.
Yeah,
Sometimes it just doesn't work out. It definitely
absolutely.
doesn't. What's the process like of training a guide dog?
It's pretty intensive. Only about 55% of dogs who are bred for guide work will actually become guide dogs when the training process is complete. And this is for guiding eyes for the blind specifically. I'm sure other guide dog schools have different statistics. And this is a pretty good percentage overall when you think about the tasks that we're asking them to perform and how rigorous their job is. So from the time that they're born, we are exposing them. Well, let me back up for a second. We breed our own stock of Labrador retrievers and German shepherds, sometimes sharing genetics with other schools, because we want to guarantee the best outcome as much as possible. So we are looking to prevent medical issues. We're looking for good work ethic, good behavioral traits. So that's why all guide dog schools typically will breed their own dogs for that purpose because we can carefully track those factors that make a great guide dog and eliminate the number of dogs who will not ultimately make it. So, from the time that our dogs are born, they're immediately exposed to different sights and sounds and smells. They have little obstacle courses to run around. They have people who will come in to give puppy massages to get them used to body handling so they're not overly sensitive to touch because they need to be resilient. We're playing different music for them, all from a young age. We're building their vocabulary, we're building up the number of things that they're exposed to when they're about 8 weeks old, after they leave their mothers and after they leave the Canine Development Center in Paterson, New York, they are then given to volunteer puppy raisers. And these are the volunteers who teach them the basic foundations of obedience, house manners, socialization. They expose them to diverse environments And again, keep building on their knowledge base to hopefully become future guide dogs. So they're the ones who are, first trying to teach them to sit and lie down and not jump on the counter, to walk quietly and patiently on leash. When they're older, they might be the first people exposing them to restaurants and learning how to settle under a table. They're teaching them how to be comfortable even walking on different surfaces. So, for example, you think of a staircase with open backs, that can be a little intimidating for a dog. So, even teaching them to walk up things that are strange to them, again, building their knowledge. Those puppy raisers have the dogs until they're about, it's a year and a half to 2 years old on average, depending on when they are ready to go in for testing. Throughout that time, of course, they still complete a variety of tests to make sure they're on the right track. But their big test is known as infiltrating, IFT for short. And that's when we put them through a series of tests in quick succession to determine if they're ready to move on to formal harness training. At that stage, as you can imagine, that's getting even more rigorous. So only a certain percentage of dogs will make it through to that stage. There's also a certain percentage that will become breeders at that stage. The best of the best will become breeders. In the official formal harness training stage, they're learning what the difference is between left and right. They're learning how to pull into a harness. They're learning how to take commands from their handler. They're learning how to move around an obstacle. They're learning to have traffic awareness, to be aware of cars. They're learning how to target stairs and changes in elevation. They're learning about street curbs. You name it. That's where they gain all the skills. Now that they have the basic obedience to be a good dog, now they're learning the obedience and commands necessary to be a good guide dog. All that said and done, including that 20-week training cycle when they are formally introduced to a harness, it takes about 2 years plus to train guide dogs. And Guiding Eyes in particular also has a specialized training program for people with disabilities in addition to blindness. Those dogs undergo even more training in addition to those 2 years.
That sounds very thorough. Is it ever a case where a dog may fail a certain part of the process and then take a little bit of time and come back and pass? Or once the dog fails, it's no longer available to become a guide dog?
So sometimes in the puppy raising stage, it may be determined that the dog needs to work on some additional skills at home, and they may come in for another infra training test to determine if they're ready to move on to formal harness training, or maybe their regional puppy instructor catches the issue early on enough to delay their infra training test. Sometimes that will happen, but odds are if a dog is showing, let's say, a significant fear of stairs or significant fear of loud noises, it's really hard to teach the dog to move on from that. And oftentimes it's unfair to do so. If the dog is showing some fear, you don't know what the handler later on will be encountering. So it's unfair to put the guide dog through those paces, knowing that the handler may have to deal with the consequences of that dog showing a fear to those things later on.
So, what if someone's listening now and they were just thinking to themselves that they might want to consider a guide dog? What would you say to them to maybe encourage them to look into it or not? If what would you say?
I would say the best parts to having a guide dog are that it's a different form of independence. It's a different form of confidence because you are building on trust and teamwork. I would also say if there's certain things about the white cane that you're not a fan of, maybe you would like the ability to travel seamlessly around obstacles instead of getting stuck in every flower pot that you pass. That is the reality of using a cane, right? Is you find every obstacle, but maybe that's frustrating in the winter when there's additional snow banks and other barriers. Maybe you wish that you could work as part of a team and you had that companionship on your routes. Maybe you were looking for a way to just kind of streamline your travel a bit and build that confidence as part of a partnership. I think a guide dog would be excellent for you. But I think there's careful consideration for it. It's not the right time for everyone. Sometimes you really have to think about how your routine would change. You would not have the same reliance on tactile feedback with a guide dog as opposed to a cane. The landmarks you use would change. So, for example, with the cane, you might feel the surface that you're shorelining change from gravel to grass. That's a great landmark to let you know that you're coming up to a key intersection. With the guide dog, instead, you might have to use information such as the surface changes under your feet, or you might have to listen to see if the area around you opens up and you can feel more airflow, for example. So those landmarks that you rely on with your cane are going to be a bit different with a guide dog. So I would really just think about how you travel, what your routine is like, and if a guide dog is right for your lifestyle at this time. If you're not sure, you can always do some research at guidingeyes.org. Our Is a Guide Dog Right for Me page is a great resource. Or you can also call our school at 888-987-2188 or email clientexperience at guidingeyes.org.
Thank you for that. Now, this question right here, I was trying to think about how to phrase the question, but I guess I'll just say it. So, if you use the guide dog, I'm assuming you would when you go grocery shopping. How do dogs help you? Like, let's just say that you want a can of carrots instead of a can of peas. Like, can dogs help with that, or would you have to get different items? I was just curious about something like that.
It's a great question. So there are certainly guide dog handlers who choose to target certain store aisles with their dog. Targeting is an exercise in which you pattern the dog to certain locations, usually using food reward, but at least, verbal and physical praise to make the dog excited to locate that location. Some handlers will also pair that location with a vocabulary word. So you can't expect your dog to catch on immediately if you're saying a random sentence to them, for example. But if you say enough times with repetition, okay, let's find the produce aisle, right? If you say produce, or if you just say cans, or if you say dairy, right? Some simple terms that you can teach your dog over time that you can help them pair with the location itself. But some people, if they're just in and out, or if they're looking for a specific brand, right, they may need to use their additional assistive technology. So, Be My Eyes, Ira, additional technology available on the iPhone to be able to scan those cans and find the right one. And the cans are always moving, right? Things in stores are always moving or out of stock, or you need to check expiration dates. So, personally, unless I'm running in for a few quick items that I can easily feel, such as produce, I will typically target the grocery stores customer service counter with my dog, and I'll ask for shopping assistance. And from there, I can cue my dog to follow the shopper's assistant. And then we can travel to all the places throughout the grocery store where we need to pick up items.
Do you think that in our lifetime AI would replace guide dogs, or do you think that they're going to stick around for much, much longer?
It's a great question and definitely one that I've thought about. I think there's a lot of companies developing AI and developing certain equipment and smart bots and smart cans even. I don't think AI will ever replace the trust and companionship that we feel with our dogs. A common example I use is if I can't trust that my Outlook won't crash on a regular basis or another program on my computer, how can I trust that a robot or AI is going to keep me safe? Guide
That's good.
dogs, I think, have very powerful instincts that are very hard, I would argue, impossible to replace with AI. So, for example, the dog loves you. The dog cares for you just like you care for and love the dog. So ultimately, they're going to look out for you, not just because it's in their training, it's in their DNA, it's in their job, but they will look out for you because they care about your safety. There is that bond that dog and handler share that helps them keep each other safe, keep each other motivated, and keep each other on track. So I think it's a really interesting concept. I think it's maybe a great alternative for people who have, let's say, dog allergies or fear of dogs, or maybe they don't want the responsibility of picking up after the dog. But with any sort of AI or improvements to accessibility and alternatives for mobility, they're just that. They're alternatives, they're options. I would certainly hope that they would never fully replace a guide dog or fully replace a white cane even.
And I like what you said too. It's the love,
Yeah.
because you can't replace that love. AI won't love you, and
No, exactly.
and I also like what you said as far as using AI along with the dog, whether it's seeing AI, Be My Eyes, Google Lookout, or whatever it is.
Exactly.
So yeah, don't be scared of it. Just try to embrace it and try to find ways to help you while still getting the love, companionship, and all of the other things that come along with your dog.
Exactly. They're all tools in your toolbox, right? It's important to have options. And, just like a lot of us will use a computer and an iPhone, it's okay to use a guide dog at times, a cane at other times. And if you want to use assistive technology while you're using either mobility tool, that's fine too. There's no one size fits all approach for any individual.
So, is there anything that you would like to maybe say that you haven't so far? We've covered a lot, but I just want to give you an opportunity.
Thank you so much for that. I don't think there's anything else I'd like to cover other than I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to talk about guiding eyes, to talk about guide dogs in general, and just help others make an informed choice about what mobility tool that they're using, what guide dog school they're planning to apply to. I don't think that's emphasized enough. And I think the power always needs to be put in the person who's blind or visually impaired's hands to make that choice for themselves. It's okay to have those who are supporting you, those who are encouraging you to travel in a certain direction, make a certain decision, but ultimately that choice is yours. So feel empowered by that. Feel empowered by the fact that you have options to pursue and that you're not just stuck inside one specific box.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for sharing all of the insight and being so detailed. And I'm glad you had personal experiences yourself. And that is really helping to make sure to just give us a full perspective, a full view. So I appreciate that. And thank you for your time. Is it okay if people reach out to you, or would you prefer them to just go to the Guiding Eyes website? Like if anyone has a question or something like that, what is your preference?
Absolutely. I can also provide my specific email address. My email is M as in Melissa, Carney, my last name, CAR, and as in November, EY at guidingeyes.org. So that's M Carney at guidingeyes.org. Please feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions about what it's like to be a guide dog handler. I'm happy to assist you in making a decision that's right for you. Of course, this is my preferred mobility tool over a white cane. I can't possibly gush more about my guide dog and everything that he's brought to my life, but I really want to help you make sure it's the right decision for you.
So is Guiding Eyes for the Blind a national organization, or is it more regional in the Northeast?
We serve people all around the US and Canada as well. So we have graduates from Connecticut to California,
Oh,
and
wow.
then
Okay.
Ontario all the way to Edmonton. Yes, so all over the place.
So you actually have like regional offices around, or do you like deliver the dogs to the people? How does that work being like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a both a residential and home training program. So those who are participating in the residential program have a fully immersive experience. They live on our campus in Yorktown Heights, New York. They get 3 meals a day. They're given the foundation for all the training that they'll need to work with and care for the dog. That's about 2 weeks long that they're staying with us. And of course, we're giving them the skills to build upon once they go home with their dog. So people travel from all over the country and Canada for that training. And then on a case by case basis for those with extenuating circumstances, we also offer a home training program in which one of our regional guide dog mobility instructors in your general vicinity will travel out to your home area and conduct that same training just in your home environment instead. But then, regardless of which program, we do offer everyone a post class visit in which we come out, just check on the team after, several weeks or a month or so have gone by, see if there's any reoccurring issues, and just make the handler feel supported because we know that for a lot of people, New York is pretty far away. So we do have 7 regional guide dog mobility instructors placed throughout the country that can assist as needed in person. And then, of course, the client experience team is available to offer virtual over the phone support from New York.
And I understand that you have dogs for other conditions.
So at this point in time, our specialized training program serves those with disabilities in addition to blindness. Those disabilities might include hearing loss, the entire scale of hearing loss, from those who are profoundly deaf to those with moderate hearing loss. Maybe they use cochlear implants or hearing aids. All of our specialized training instructors are fluent in American Sign Language as well as tactile sign. And then we do serve individuals who balance challenges. Maybe they have a preferred learning style that would be best suited through specialized training. Cerebral palsy is a very common condition. And anyone that has had injuries, or maybe they're missing a left hand, so the dog needs to be trained on the right side. Dogs are traditionally trained on the left. So that would require a custom dog to be able to receive commands from the left side and be able to provide pull in the harness to someone using their right hand.
Why would someone choose Guiding Eyes for the Blind over another organization? You've kind of said so much, your specialized training or your special offerings. I don't know if you want to elaborate more or that those will be the reasons why someone would maybe choose your organization.
I would say the specialized training program is definitely a consideration for choosing Guiding Eyes if you have disabilities in addition to blindness. Another aspect that I believe makes Guiding Eyes for the Blind stand out is our financial assistance to our graduates. So we all know how much inflation is impacting us all, and vet care for our dogs is no exception. So we do offer a $600 stipend every calendar year through our graduate assistance fund that can be used towards the cost of vet care. So that's monthly preventative. So, flea and tick medicine, heartworm medicine, vaccinations, nail trims, annual checkups, blood tests, etc. So that $600 goes a pretty long way. And in addition to that, if there were an emergency or if the dog needs to be referred to a specialist for a certain condition, we also offer additional funds for those two circumstances as well. So that is very helpful, I would say, especially for the college students out there, especially given the fact that there's a large unemployment rate for those who are blind or visually impaired. And you just never know what life will throw at you. I think it's a great security blanket being able to have that support from the school. And the last thing I'll mention is the follow up support in general. We really care about each person as an individual. So if there are struggles, if there are questions, we encourage our graduates to reach out to us, to let us know, to communicate with us regularly. And we also conduct in-person visits. We check in, we observe dogs and their handlers walking routes to make sure that the teams are safe, to address any worries that the handler has or help them troubleshoot. So whether it's in person or virtual follow up, the resources on our website available to graduates, just the compassion from those who are working in the field or those who are working on our client experience team, I think really stands out. And when I say this, I'm speaking as a graduate of Guiding Eyes for the Blind before I was ever a staff member.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. This was very enlightening. And I learned a lot. I'm sure a lot of people have learned a lot, and I'm sure some people are going to reach out to you and the organization to consider getting a guide dog. And hopefully, someone that never thought about getting a guide dog could at least consider it, because you never know until you do the assessment on the website or talk to people or do some research. It could be something that could change your life for the better. You actually experienced that. You said that this was your first guide dog, and it's been a great experience for you, and you're an advocate for it. And I can definitely see that it's been good for you, and it can be good for others. And if not, you'll find that out too.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much. I appreciate your time. This has been great, and have a great evening.
Thank you. You as well.